Yeah, we just said this idea of multi-age grouping, has some fantastic benefits for kids. Why shouldn't it be like a big family thing with very little ones all the way up to the oldest ones that we have in one program? Mm-hmm. And how did we ever persuade someone to do something so insane?
but the thing that I've been thinking a little bit about this, and it wasn't that wild of an idea because we were already 4, 5, 6.
That's
and
true.
There was 1, 2, 3 grades, and so basically what they did, do you remember they just cut our rosters so that it looked like there was a 4, 5, 6 classroom and a K through 3. The radical piece was that we insisted on K. Remember Gay's conversations with us?
That's right.
That we were,
whether to have kindergarten
or not, and we decided that we wanted the scope. The amazing part that I have to share is that they carved a door for us. And I've been in education for over 30 years, and to have that done over a summer in a public institution, that's
a door between two
that's
classrooms.
The question I really want to have answered. Is
Who did that?
How did we get that done?
You've heard of the one-room schoolhouse. Well, these 3 teachers, Elaine Kalamanis, Paul Douglass, and Rosemarie Sullivan Thornbush, were the teachers in this classroom, and they came to me and asked if they could have a room divided so that there would be a doorway from room 8 to room 9, and that they could have kindergarten through the 6th grade. And so we tried it, and it was such a tremendous hit. And these 3 teachers did such a phenomenal job that we carried it on even into the 7th grade, because the 6th graders didn't want to leave when they finished 6th grade here. They wanted to have a 7th grade. So we petitioned the school board just before they were ready to close us that we could have a 7th grade, and they acquiesced and let us have 7th grade for 1 year.
I think a lot of things happened. I think Billy Vincent was laying the groundwork for us to do this. She was a teacher who came from rural Virginia, and she taught here, and she really believed in this little schoolhouse, basically philosophy, where kids could teach each other. And so she laid a lot of the philosophy. She'd done a class earlier, several years before. Then I think the combination of our enthusiasm and her experience, I really think, helped the principal. And John Bobo was the principal, and we were able to convince him to do this, and that this was an idea that could work.
Well, and the amazing part was the legacy that those people had given us when we became teachers was that this already existed. This multi-age environment, if you talk to any of the teachers that are here today, we inherited that hard work because they, in the late 60s, got a Ford Foundation grant, and I know that Billy Vincent was part of that. I'm not quite sure.
Well, Billy's the reason. She was my teacher, and I was in this room, and I remember she had set up a station where when kids got done with their work, they could go grind on a lens, and we were making a reflecting telescope that took a whole year to make, But that I think for me, that was, I totally agree with you. She laid the groundwork for me. She made me want to be a teacher.
Well, and the other thing that made it really work was that we really were a very cohesive group of teachers, the 3 of us. We really finished each other's sentences as we're doing today, right?
It's all coming back.
Yeah. And, okay, so now what I want to do is I want to talk about the cards, okay? One of the things that our students keep telling us is that the fluidity of what went on in the classrooms and the kind of choice that they had, they sort of think that it all happened by magic. And I keep asking them, do you remember our card system? And none of them remembers the card system. And what we did was, the amount of work, I think, ultimately did us in terms of this idea. We met every Thursday night, the 3 of us, for at least 2 to 3 hours to plan the curriculum. And we tightly wove that curriculum so that it moved from K through 6. The strong suit that we had was the fact that by the end of the day, we had a class of 30 kids that were 4, 5, 6th grade and 2 teachers. And so the things that we were able to do—
The younger ones had gone home earlier.
The things that we were able to do with those older kids were truly amazing because we had them help us become teachers in some ways. And so to organize them throughout the day to make sure that those little ones were getting their basics. And somebody told me, I remember, I guess it was Evie Klein who was telling me that she remembered Jason Ware teaching her how to multiply. And I thought, yes, yes, we did it.
Yeah.
But we ran this through a whole system of choice. And I think that also had something to do with Billy, because Billy was very, very pro-kid and empowering children. Now this is the 70s when Summerhill and Choice and all that stuff was there. And we truly believed in that. But we also believed that we were the adults and we needed to be in charge and there needed to be some structure and there was some kind of responsibility that we had to the curriculum. And so how to mesh that and make that work was the challenge. And so what we did was we devised this plan. It's like the old IBM card thing, I think is what it basically was, where the kids had choices. We had everything in centers and we planted ourselves in strategic places to teach them what we could do, and then we got the rest of them to do other things. But the choice was they got to choose when they were going to do these things. But we ran it in such a cycle so there was, language arts going from 9 to 10 in 2 classrooms, but they didn't know that, and math going on in 2 classrooms, and science. The science, I think we ran it as an independent. I remember this because I remember spending a lot of time in it. It started my big curiosity in terms of teaching science as a station where they had to basically construct their meaning and create understanding from what we had given them in terms of what was going on. Sometimes it was observational, sometimes it was an experiment. Same thing with the cooking. I mean, I can remember some of those kids making the most atrocious cookies. But, because they knew ultimately what the difference between a teaspoon and a tablespoon was in terms of baking soda.
A story that jumps to my mind from this room is a day in 3rd grade probably. I had an older brother who was off in junior high dissecting frogs and telling stories about it. And right about the same time we're in class one day and Elaine Kalamanis comes in AM hours and just says, okay, I need 5 kids who want to go dissect. And me and Antal, without even thinking about it, just raised our hands up and we were carried off along with Steve Darrow and I'm not sure who exactly else. We were brought to this room where Elaine then came and broke open a container full of cows' eyeballs, which we proceeded to dissect and go back to the classroom, and all the other kids were jealous for the rest of the year.
One of the biggest, funniest memories that I had came from Elaine Kalamanis' class when I was in 6th grade. And she has since sort of clarified some more information. It was with the frogs. And she was forced to buy or procure over 100 frogs for us just in order for us to be able to learn dissection. Unfortunately, the frogs came frozen, which meant that as they thawed, some of them were still alive. Which you can imagine a room full of kids having it turn into utter mayhem. And some of the boys figured out how to efficiently kill them. And then it turned out too that some of the frogs became class pets, and what Elaine told me on the day of the reunion was that she gradually made the frogs disappear out of the classroom.
I came from a very traditional school in Redlands. My parents were both educators and they met Billy Vincent, a Sycamore teacher, back at the Claremont Graduate University, and Billy told my parents about this free school, and my folks knew I wasn't thriving already in kindergarten and 1st grade in a traditional environment. And so my family packed up, we moved to Claremont, and my brother Steve and my sister Sarah and I all went to Sycamore. Steve was in Billy's class, I didn't get that opportunity. My first teacher was Mrs. Rogers, and she was a teacher from England. She was on exchange. And I remember being the new kid in the class, and she just came to me and she said, I like you so much, you're like a little English girl. I thought, wow. So for a year and a half I spoke with an English accent, wore a derby to school thinking that's what good little English girls did. But what really that was about was being validated as a person. My first 2 years of school were just miserable. My teachers didn't know I knew how to read coming into school, had no idea I could already write. So it wasn't really very affirming. And I got to Sycamore, and even though there were bumps, I reread some of my report cards from Mrs. Page's class, my 3rd and 4th grade teacher. And back then they were essays about the child, and she wrote all the good stuff, and then she wrote, you know, I still just don't know how to get through to Rebecca. And I thought about that, and what we had from our teachers was love, acceptance, and they tried to meet us where we were, wherever that was. And for me, it was in England somewhere. But she reeled me in probably 4th grade. 5th and 6th grade, I was in Elaine's class, and I remember the frog stories you may have heard about. I remember the bicentennial. I thought it had something directly to do with being in 6th grade at Sycamore School. I lived in a wild imaginary life most of my childhood, and going to Sycamore really affirmed my way of thinking. My friends, we played all the time, and I didn't realize at the time that was what we were doing at school. We were learning through play, exploration, digging up ancient cultures, running with a giant parachute, and singing songs about freedom and justice, and all of these values that I think now are still very important to me, reasons why I brought my own kids to go to Sycamore in the 90s.